Hello, and welcome to another season of History After Hours. This is season 4, believe it or not, episode 1. My name is Kevin Pumphrey, and with me, as usual, is Mr. Ron Franklin. And we are history teachers at Lakeside High School in Hot Springs, Arkansas. In this episode here, we recorded live in front of students. It is August 31st, 2018. And the way our live podcast works is we simply record it in front of students and they ask us questions randomly. We don't know what they're going to ask. And then we just talk about it. And we're going to have several live podcasts this year, whether it's just in front of our students at school. Today was a goofy day where there was a big football game and we had a pep rally right in the middle of the day. A lot of people were going to be out. So we thought it would be a good day to do something like this. We try to do that on days at school where it's hard to get just regular class done. We're also going to have live podcasts, of course, at Collective Coffee in downtown Hot Springs. We're going to try to do that at least once a month. So we've got a lot of big things coming up, some interviews. And without further ado, we hope you enjoy this episode of History After Hours.
And ask your question.
Wesley Divers.
All right.
Who's your celebrity crush?
I've never been that kind of person.
Oh, come on now.
No, and what's funny is me and my wife had this conversation not that long ago. It wasn't a crush thing, but it was like if you go see a band or somebody sing, like even people that we really, really like, I have no interest at all in talking to them afterwards or getting their autograph. That means nothing to me. I don't know if we've mentioned this.
No.
She's the kind that wants to hang around and meet them, even if it's just for a minute, and say hello, and can you sign this? And I really love your music or your comedy or whatever else. And for me, I'm just not into celebrities at all. Some of the celebrities they have such little talent, I can barely respect them. I mean, I don't like fame for the sake of fame. I don't even know what fame is. I mean, it's just a bunch of people that admire you for something, I guess. But if you take like the Kardashians, who have no real talent other than being dramatic, but people love that. I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong. Hey, go make $1 million. I would love that. I'd do it if I could. But I just don't have the celebrity thing.
Yeah.
I've never just been like,
oh, all right. So maybe not.
I would hang out with them.
Maybe crush is too strong a word then. How about just somebody that you like, that you do really respect and like, and would, kind of, if you hung out with them long enough, it could turn into a crush.
I would want to hang out with like stand-up comedians because I find them interesting and funny, obviously, and they have a unique outlook on life. I would not want to hang around with any actor or just that somebody that's so super famous you can't even talk to them. That would be a boring. Yeah, they just I don't know. I would just want somebody down to earth that I could actually hang out with.
Yeah,
and just be like, what's up?
All right. Well,
but sorry, that's a boring answer.
I'll pick somebody.
Crush.
Make something up.
But we live in an age of celebrity. Obviously, people, watch 1 million YouTube videos. You can become a YouTube star or a Insta, whatever.
You're telling me that when you were growing up, you never had a moment where you were like, yeah, that person.
Oh, now, finding people attractive, that's a whole different. I guess if you're going to go celebrity crush.
You're going to go like cartoons. Hey. I've had this conversation actually before with some other people, and there was a friend of mine who was like, Jessica Rabbit. Do you guys remember have you ever seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit? And I'm like, I'm not sure I can still be your friend. Like, this is a cartoon. Right?
Yeah, but that was for the age. This was before cartoons. You knew cartoons could be bad. This is before Family Guy and South Park and all that. Right. So cartoon mean kid. So when we were kids, when a cartoon happened, it was for kids. Well, this particular cartoon had a lady in it that was a bit shapely. And for people our age...
The famous quote is, I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way.
Yeah, what year was that, you think? Early 90s? Late 80s?
90-something, I guess.
Yeah, we were both probably just a...
Somebody look that up. Look that up for me. When was Roger Rabbit? Who Framed Roger Rabbit? When was that released?
But for kids that were between the ages of, I don't know, especially for boys, between the ages of like 10 and 15, that was like the first time you saw a cartoon like that. 1988.
88. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, I was too far ahead on that.
Yeah, I was, yeah. But I didn't really get into that. That was... That's weird we're talking about that.
All right, well, I'm going to answer the question. I always kind of had a thing for Jennifer Aniston. I always thought she was really someone I could go, yeah, we could probably hang up. She probably wouldn't think twice about me. I always kind of liked her.
By the way,
Bethany Witherspoon.
Okay, Bethany, ask your question.
What's your favorite board game?
All right. Do kids still play board games? Is that still a thing? Because everybody's on their phone. I mean, that doesn't count. Yeah. What's a popular board game for people your age?
Monopoly.
You guys still like
Still.
Monopoly?
Yeah.
All right. Risk
Risk.
is that's a good one.
I was a big Monopoly guy. Of course, now I'm a nerd, so I like trivia games just because, I don't know.
What's the weirdest board game you've ever seen? Like, I never understood Chutes and Ladders.
Mousetrap.
It seems too simplistic.
What was all that all about? Remember the Mousetrap game?
The Mousetrap game, you got to build the thing and catch the mouse.
Yeah, you got to spend
You guys
20
know
minutes
that one?
building it.
The mouse? Do they still make those? Mousetrap?
You sang My Battleship. Remember that?
Battleship. I really liked Battleship because that was just that cool strategy about trying to hide and then blow your other dudes up, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of aggression in that, which I think I liked.
I was always
Enough
intimidated by chess, but I like it.
What's
but
the
I'm always
lamest board game ever that you could think of?
Lamest?
Yeah,
Probably
most
bingo.
Lame. Most lame. Lamest? Is that a word?
B34.
No.
You don't you need 3 brain cells to play that. So yeah,
Yeah,
bingo. There's nothing to it. It's all chance.
Yeah.
The only way that you have any stake in the game is if you just don't see that you made 5 across or that you just didn't see it.
When we
Hi.
say your name.
Allison Lawarka.
Okay.
Okay, so it's kind of like 2 questions in one. It's like how
Get
much
into the mic.
modern slang do you know, and like how do you feel about it?
Modern slang. I don't like modern slang because it comes and goes. Remember
Yeah.
lit? Is that still a thing? Yeah.
Barely.
No, listen. You need slang that has stood the test of time, like cool and dude. But remember rad?
Rad.
People try to bring that back.
What
All right.
was some? I'm thinking about some slang. What was
Remember-
some slang when you were a kid? I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so like groovy was early for me because I had like bell bottoms and I was that kid, right? I looked like Shaggy from Scooby Doo, right? And then in the 80s, like tubular. I remember that one.
Oh wow,
That was totally tubular.
I missed that one.
Yeah, go watch Fast Times at Ridgemont High. There's a lot of stuff in there.
There was a lot of dude and rad,
Dude was a popular one. I think still
excellent
is.
stuff like that, like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure kind of stuff.
Yeah, dude, where's
Bogus.
my car?
That was the thing for a while.
Dude, where's my brain?
But you remember Ratchet and all that stuff that y'all used to say? It comes and goes though. That's why I urge you, don't when it comes around. Remember Paris Hilton? That's hot. That's hot. Ugh. When it comes around and you hear that next thing coming, refuse to do it. You stick with the foundational ones that last years and years. Don't get caught up because then the very next year when it's out of style and you say it a little too late, and everybody looks at you like, "Oh, you're still saying that word." What's the newest?
Give me something that's new.
Here, go ahead. You'll have to talk into the mic though. Just real quick, I'd like to something we don't know.
Say something like filled with slang that we might not understand.
That's the T, sis.
All right, you're gonna have to interpret it now because I haven't heard that one. The T, sis.
It's like, what's the gossip, bro? But like,
What's the
And
T?
bro, by the way,
How's the T part fit in?
because tea is gossip.
A talk.
It's like spilling the beans, but you
Yeah.
spill the tea.
Spill the tea.
Oh, like TEA.
Yes.
So this everybody knew that. Everybody, y'all have heard
Yeah.
this?
Oh,
How does that-
Their sister.
When something like that comes out, like how does it become so widespread and knowledgeable so quickly?
Celebrity.
Just-
James Charles.
Celebrity stuff?
Oh, this is why we don't know.
Ah, okay, this is like social memes.
Okay.
I am glad that I've lived long enough to be a participant in like dank memes.
My least favorite thing is when they take a word that's pretty short and they try to make a slang out of it to try to make it easier to say or something like crazy, 1, 2, cray cray, 1, 2. What was the point? That's so cray cray. It's like you could say crazy. It's
Nobody's-
the same length.
That's not a thing either, right? Cray Cray's gone.
Oh, I hope so.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
What's your favorite NFL team?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, come on.
Hey, 6. What? Okay, no, what? Come back, Edward Ivy. Come back.
Hello.
We're not through conversing, especially after
Return.
that reaction.
All right.
All right, what is your? I'm assuming you're a Cowboys fan then.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, tell me why. What would it be about Dallas other than the fact that it's like close? What would be the other reason? And you answer it, then I'll say some things. Go.
Because my dad's a Cowboys fan, and
Okay.
he was watching that whenever I was a kid, and I was like, cool.
Yeah, I went the opposite route. My dad was a Cowboys fan. I told you a while ago that we had a rivalry personally. So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of the reason why I lean towards the Steelers.
Oh.
But I was like 70s, steel curtain, 5 Super Bowl rings, and you can snarl all you want to, but the truth is that they dominate. And so we'll see what this season brings.
Dominated.
How far
Dallas
did
has
the
been on a
playoffs-
tear, haven't
How
they?
far did the playoffs of the Cowboys go last year?
We're not talking
How
about the
far did the
Cowboys.
playoffs of the Cowboys go last year?
I mean,
You know what? I don't hate Dallas. Let me say that. I really do like
We
them.
remember when they were good.
Yeah. And when most of them weren't in jail.
That's fair.
No, I like Jerry Jones, and I like him a lot more now that Tony Romo's gone.
Oh,
I hated
come
Tony
on.
Romo. Like, that guy was ruining. I just couldn't even root for them while he was on the field because he was going to ruin it for me every single time. I will root for the Cowboys when I'm not watching the other team. But yeah.
Why do you hate Tony Romo so much?
Huh?
Why do you hate Tony Romo so much?
Because he was like this semi-celebrity. But he didn't have any talent, in my opinion. Not compared to.
He was just in the NFL.
Yeah, I know he's in the NFL. I get that. But compared to the other NFL players, I thought that he choked a lot, and I think that he wasn't the right guy for the job. And you can't argue with that.
That's true.
I mean, he brought them he holds a lot of records. I'll grant you that too. But that doesn't really mean anything when you can't finish, and he is not a finisher. I like him much better as an NFL commentator than I did as a player.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Okay, so you and I agree.
I guess.
There we go. All right.
I'm Olivia Lawrence. Sorry.
Hi.
Okay. So my question is, if you could have dinner, lunch, breakfast, I don't know, whatever you're feeling, with anybody in history, who would it be and why?
What would we eat? Sort of depends on who the person is, I guess, right? Anybody at any point in history?
Well, this is kind of like the last question. If we could go
A little
back
bit
and
about yeah. That's tricky because there's so many cool people. I think somebody who was.
it's hard to narrow it down to one person.
Geez, yeah, maybe a luncheon with multiple people. I would like to have lunch with Frederick Douglass
Okay.
because that guy came forward so far in a really short amount of time. He started, he was obviously disadvantaged in his early life, but became, highly educated, highly influential, not just politically but also socially. So I think it'd be interesting to sit down with that guy and just pick his brain a little bit and see what it was like to be him.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, mine would be. I mean,
we could go ancient history too, but I just kind of went more recent.
yeah, I would love of the founding fathers. I think Jefferson
Jefferson
would be,
interesting.
or Franklin. Those two guys, they're smart and they had, they did a lot of different things.
You ever been
Like
to
George
Monticello?
Washington, I don't think that'd be too interesting of a conversation. I mean, I'm sure it would be, but not as much like Jefferson. Like that guy was way ahead of his time. He saw the French Revolution. So he would
Have you ever been to his home, Monticello?
Yeah.
It's like a museum. I mean, it's like a science museum. If you ever get a chance to go, it's not a huge house, but it's really it's just filled with all kinds of neat things, and the property's beautiful. So
Yeah.
Jefferson would be a good one.
The U.S. should withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement.
I like clean air. So what do you know about that? Just curious.
Not very much, so I'm asking. Yeah.
The Paris Climate Agreement signed by not just France and the United States, but you have multiple countries around the world who are pledging to try to reduce their carbon emissions so that we can have. It's not just about the climate change and the global warming aspect of it, but it's also about just clean air that we can breathe. There are cities in this country, as a matter of fact, that are so heavily polluted from whether it's factories or whether it's car emissions or whatever, and that the people there are their lives are being shortened because of that. And if you go to other countries who don't have any emission standards at all, let's say China, for example, like people are actually much less likely to die earlier because they're if you have to live in a city and you have to wear an oxygen mask when you go out. Like, that's a bad sign. I mean, it's probably great for capital and their business is booming, but that comes at a real cost. So I think that ultimately, whether we agree with all the specifications in that climate agreement or not, in the Paris Accord or not, that to just distance ourselves from it completely and say, no, we're not going to participate, we're not going to be part of the conversation. I think that is, I think it's...
It was just political. The only reason
it's a political thing ultimately. But it's also I think.
Well, it was the first
dangerous in its own
step. There was nothing before this where you had that many countries working together towards a common thing. And yes, some countries might not do it, even though they promised they would. Some countries will. The worst thing about it, I mean, is really just it became political when Trump came along because any deal that Obama was a part of, he wanted to undo. And it didn't matter if it was good or bad, and everybody kind of admits that, whether it's good or bad. It just became political. And what was interesting is after he basically said we're not in it anymore, the private sector of our country, the corporations, said they were going to keep with it. So that was
certain states like California declared that they were going to hold on.
They were going to hold on to it, whether the United States as a whole does or not. So it was just a political move, and that's the only. We wouldn't even be talking about the Paris thing if it wasn't for Trump.
There's economic pressure on, I think, our administration to do something as well, because industries. Anytime you try to curb emissions, what that really means is that on people that are the massive polluters in the world, like like I said, super factories and whatnot, then you have to. They are held accountable for the expenditure that it takes to clean up or to refit their factory so that they have less emissions, and that's costly, and that then cuts into their profits, which then cuts into their stocks, perhaps the stock value, and so they're not really. That's part of it that you may not understand.
Yeah.
But
the greatest harm to me is that we were one of the leaders.
That's
we
where I
had
was
to be
going next.
that made it happen, and now we're backing up, saying no, we're not a part of it. When we were one of the major countries, you had to have us, right? You got to have China. You've got to have the big shots, and it's kind of like when Woodrow Wilson. Y'all might not know this yet, but in World War I, he was the main person arguing for a League of Nations, and then the United States was like, no, we're not doing it. And then he said, they've shamed us in the eyes of the world. So it's more importantly, it's what it looks like. I don't know what exactly it would accomplish or wouldn't accomplish. That remains to be seen. But just the fact that we were one of the main architects of it, and then we back out, kind of makes us look bad. From a global perspective.
From a leadership standpoint, if we truly mean that we want to be world leaders, then we have to step up to the plate and do some things that may be difficult, even though they're the right thing to do. And with this, it just seems like we're taking a back seat and let other people try to make some decisions, and we look like fools ultimately on the global scene. And that's not something that will be good for us in the long run, ultimately. So it's complicated, obviously.
I have
go
another
ahead. Yeah.
question.
Right.
It's like
Get up close.
it's not related to that question,
Okay.
really. But I want to know more on the impeachment. But the
There's
like
no
the
impeachment
talk about, isn't there?
Well, there's people are throwing that word out there.
Yeah, because I don't understand
Pretty
what is
complicated,
going
but
on.
I can give you a real short one.
Yeah, go short.
So you got the House Department of Justice that has to bring this topic. The House has to vote on it, and it has to pass by 2/3. Then the papers go to the Senate, and the Senate acts like basically it's a trial then. And so then that's also 2/3. No, that's a supermajority. 61 senators have to vote for removal of office. Impeachment technically means just accusal of wrongdoing. The House can do that. Okay, so so for instance, in November, if the Democrats take over the majority in the House, they can impeach Trump decently easy. What's nearly impossible, and it's never happened, is the Senate convicts an actual removal from office. We've never had it. We've had 2 impeachments.
That's where the Nixon thing comes in, because
he would have been probably
after his impeachment aspect through the House. He got out. He actually resigned before the Senate could do their part, which they were probably going to by that point because he had a lot of people who had turned against him. I just don't. Even with this,
You need
era that we
40 to
have, I don't
50.
think it's ever going to be a thing.
You probably need 50 Republican senators to vote to impeach Trump, and that's not going to happen. I don't think.
Unless
Unless
there's
something
something with this Mueller investigation that proves,
Mueller investigation,
without
yeah.
a shadow of a doubt, that he was involved in some criminal activity or continues to be. I don't think that it's actually going to go anywhere. It's and for people to sort of throw that out there right now. Well, when can we impeach him? I think that you're really jumping way ahead of yourself, and it's not doing your side's position or what you hope to achieve. I don't think that's really doing you any good. All right, go.
Yeah.
I'm Ethan Savella.
Yep.
What are your predictions on the score tonight?
Lakeside 105. Lake Hamilton -3.
-2 safety.
-2. All right. Yeah. I honestly I don't because the teams change so much from year to year, and I don't know what their strengths and weaknesses are this year. I know that you guys have probably covered that. You're watching film and all that kind of stuff. So I hope for a good competitive game, but obviously I hope that we win.
I know as a coach, games like this, rivalry games and homecoming, as a coach, you're just like, let's get this done. And honestly, obviously, they're not in our conference, so It's just bragging rights, and there's going to be a million people here,
and
it's been built up.
It's energetic because of the renewal of the old rivalry.
I would, as a coach, once again, we can lose this one. Let's not lose any of those conference games. Let's go. Let's win all those. I wouldn't trade this one game for a conference game. So you have to keep it in perspective. But hopefully, you want to win. Every win is
regardless
valuable.
of how it turns out, regardless of who wins. Let's just, God forbid, assume that maybe they win the game tonight. But you guys end up going to the playoffs and they don't. That's still.
Which would you rather have?
Who's better? You can still say, look at us, right? So.
But every game's important, so win. Just win. We won't have to worry about it.
Come back up. All right, who's next?
Macy Landry. And do y'all think that playing football as a toddler or child is okay?
Well, I have a stepson. He doesn't play. Now, he's not the type of, he plays soccer and he didn't really want to play. And I'm glad. Although I played football and basketball and every other sport they'd let me play. It's kind of the same argument as should people play in the NFL if they're going to get, look, as long as people, unless they change the rules of the game, football is as it is. Parents need to understand the risks. They have traced CTE all the way back to 7th grade. You can get concussions early on. What effects this have, they're still studying. The problem with football, as far as CTE goes, is the helmets are battering rams. And your brain is inside your skull just floating. So when you get hit, even though it protects your skull, your brain gets sloshed around in there. And that's the thing. There has been talk of taking helmets back down to just leather helmets or no helmets at all like rugby because they have way far less cases of CTE because they don't go
when our helmets
ramming
helmet
into each other.
Got better, more sort of scientific, and we got the cushion, but it gave this illusion of security, and so people actually slam into each other at much more violent aspect than they did in the past. If you were wearing a leather helmet back in the day, those boys knew that you better not go full force at somebody because it's gonna ring your bell. So, like I said, this illusion of security in the helmets, I think, has caused an acceleration of the game, which has caused some of the higher rates of concussions and whatnot. So I also think that a lot of times it has to do with poor training. Maybe some of the coaches for the younger kids don't necessarily show them the right form for tackling, and they go at it in the wrong way. There is a way to do it more safely.
Down and ramming into each other, and really it's going to be the bigger guys that are on the line that are just every play banging heads. It seems to be that's worse doing that every play than getting hit pretty bad one time or whatever. So it's still we're still kind of working this out. I love football. I don't think we should
eliminate the sport.
Yeah, right. The training, the weight training that you guys do, and the football, like kids are stronger, bigger, faster today than ever. So that's another element to this. Yep. All right.
But we already have a question ready to roll. So step up to the mic, say your name and your question.
Madeline Boyd, what are your views on capital punishment?
All right. So just initially, pro or con, without any specialization here. No specifics. Just pro or con, generally speaking.
I like capital letters. Capital punctuation is one of. Oh, that's not what we're talking about. It's a tricky, slippery slope, is it not? Because you could say that you're for it, but you probably need to couch that only for certain things.
Do you know anybody who's just like full force? Yeah, every time.
Yes.
Like I know people like that who are
especially around here.
Well, I just growing up, even I knew people who were like that. They would say, or if I'm thinking about warfare, like, well, we should just turn that place into a glass parking lot. Drop nukes. I'm like, right. Hey, calm down, right? Maybe there's a better answer. So I know people who are like. I don't know. Maybe it just depends on the way you were raised, but I think there's probably a need for it on some level. Do you agree with that, or?
Yes, there's two options: either you do that, or they're in prison for the rest of their lives, and we're paying for it, and then they die.
Yeah. Well, are you guys familiar with the West Memphis 3 story? Any of you guys? Okay, so there were teenagers from West Memphis, Arkansas, who were accused of brutally murdering 2 young boys in their community. and they were sort of outsider type kids. They were I guess a couple of them were sort of goth kids. One was sort of a special needs kid, I think, at the same time, and because they sort of looked different and they looked like they might be culprits, just the way they dressed and they kept their hair and whatever. Like a lot of people were already sort of biased against them apparently, and so they were charged with these murders, even though there was really shoddy evidence that was sort of setting them up, and then evidence that could have been presented that wasn't necessarily allowed in court, which could have exonerated them apparently. So anyway, they all get convicted, and they sit in prison, a couple of them on death row, a kid named Damian Eccles specifically, and they're maintaining their innocence the whole time, and even years later, when they're, because you have automatic appeals and things like that, they had there was more evidence that was coming to light, and even the young boys who had been murdered in that story, even their own father, one of their own fathers, came out later and said, I think these guys deserve a new trial. I don't think this is right. I don't think that they did it. I mean, I used to think that, but now I don't. And so, come to find out, they didn't do it. But, and there was evidence that was finally presented, but they didn't want to go through a new trial. And so they had to, it was a weird thing. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They actually had to agree to plead guilty, and then the judge would give them time served because they wanted to avoid a trial because they had been in prison for 20-something years, I think. And there was this massive movement, Free the West Memphis 3. I remember people chanting that, and there were news stories about it, all documentaries about it. You can actually look. There are documentaries about this. And so that's a case in point where these guys actually didn't do it, but the system was sort of stacked against them, if you will, and there was a lot of community bias against these boys. And but if they had been executed on time, so to speak, then they would have actually executed innocent dudes. So,
Yeah,
but what about the appeal
I'm still
process?
hesitant.
What about the appeal process? How many appeals do you get? Do you just exhaust that until you're sure that you're sure that you're sure? I mean,
yeah, I mean, people sit on death row for years and years and years and years. So it's not like we just convict them and kill them. There is a long time, and usually, if evidence was to pop up, it would happen.
Does the method of execution matter to you?
Yes.
If they finally exhausted all their appeals,
beaten by wooden spoons. I mean, I think we don't need that one. I think obviously the lethal injection that we do now, the painless one, we don't need to bring back the electric chair.
Well, there's some controversy about that though. But one of the arguments against lethal injection is that one of the three drugs paralyzes you, but it doesn't necessarily keep you from feeling pain. It may just keep you from being able to express that you're feeling pain, and so everybody thinks that it's nice and neat, and it's maybe not. So I don't know. I mean,
and one of the drugs is also super, super hard to get right now.
Right.
And some of them are coming from different countries who are holding back on
because
us.
even though the state is killing someone, the no cruel or unusual punishment law still exists, right? It's part of the Constitution. So is it cruel and unusual to put someone to death, especially like that, if we're not exactly sure how they're feeling while we're doing it? To humanely euthanize someone, that's a weird thing to say, maybe. Okay, just state your name real quick for the record, real close.
Heather Farewell.
Okay, cool.
The problems with mental health in America and like how we can't get care for these problems.
Mm-hmm. I've heard people say that part of the problem with trying to deal with mental health concerns is that people are so stigmatized by having a condition like that. They're afraid to let people know because then it makes them seem weak. I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that could be keeping people from admitting that they have something that needs to be dealt with, or maybe they're afraid of how they'll be viewed from that point forward. And the way we even talk about it, I've heard experts say, well, we shouldn't use words like crazy because it's demeaning. I'm not crazy. I have a condition that I need help with, especially if you're talking about some sort of traumatic event that's caused.
I think mental health in general, let's just generalize. And by the way, there's a caveat. I'm not a doctor of any sort, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm not an expert in this. But just a layman's view of this entire situation is humans over the last century or so are definitely dealing with stuff that our ancestors for thousands, millions of years have never. Like, we're not designed to be in this situation under artificial lights with this artificial building, talking to these artificial things, looking at our artificial phone, and having as much communication with the world as we do. So we're grappling with all this. I mean, you think about what life was like even 15, 20 years ago.
Do you think there's is there evidence of greater levels of anxiety today?
I think anxiety, prescription medication deals in with that, societal pressures, internet bullying, I mean, we communicate with so many more people instantly and anonymously.
I would argue that maybe the 24-hour news cycle causes a lot of stress too, because people feel that there's so much, because they always focus on the bad things because that's what gets attention. And so it makes it look like every day like the world's blowing up. And it is their job to inform us, but at the same time, I think that there is some, I think they exaggerate a little bit on purpose to make it seem more widespread than it really is. And then people get anxious over that. I mean, I think that's, you agree with that?
I just think we're living in such a weird time. I mean, really, like celebrity culture, fame. Like, that's something brand new. Of course, social media pressures and getting addicted to liking the buttons.
The last class that was in here talking about that Catch Me Outside girl, like the fact that she is famous, I'm bothered by that.
And some people, they do mass shootings because they want to be famous. Like that didn't exist 100 years ago. You couldn't just get famous for doing that, right? You weren't all over the TV and the internet. And then add to that prescription medication availability that's on a rate we've never seen before.
Right.
Add to that helicopter parenting, not letting your children deal with their own problems when they're young. So
That's something as teachers we see that a lot.
So
actually.
It's multifaceted and everyone's different. I just think life for humans has changed so much in the past century. I think that's one of the major reasons that we're grappling with these new issues, and mental health, I think, is part of that.
So, is it a matter of? Would it be better to have a community-based effort to help people on a more individual basis, or do you think that the state government or
not
the
the
federal
state
government should be involved? Do you think, there should definitely be more protections for
We've got to
people who
figure
are
out a way
suffering.
to get funding, but I think private institutions and local communities have to take the lead.
Mental health care can be expensive, though, and a lot of people.
That's true.
And insurance won't cover that.
I mean, I don't have that answer either, because we're it's one of those things where we have a hybrid system now, where it's partly privatized with insurance companies, and then it's partly public. I think you got to pick a route. Let's either make it Medicare for everyone or let the companies compete. For kids, I just don't think it's healthy that you can sit in your room, go plug into the computer, and get lost in this virtual world day after day after day and not have human interaction.
Did you hear about the guy down in Florida? They were at that gaming at the, I guess, tournament.
Madden.
Yeah,
football.
the Madden NFL tournament. And then he loses, apparently. I wonder if when they dig into this kid's background, I wonder if there's going to be some mental health issues there. Like, why would you go to that extreme over this thing? I mean, I
can't imagine there not being some mental
it was his life. I mean, is that true? They can say anything on TV. I don't know if that's absolutely true. Maybe so. What? It was his life. That doesn't make him a lethal. I mean,
I spent my entire
what stepped him to that point where he actually targeted folks and shot them? I don't get that. There had to be something else going on.
I mean, and to be honest, the gun problem that we have in this country is really, it's a mental health problem, right?
I would agree that that's a factor.
So
yeah.
I mean, maybe you can do some things legally, gun-wise, to make it less likely for people with mental health to get the guns, because that's the whole point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a lot to this, and once again, if I had the problem, if I could solve it, I would simply just email somebody important and say, here's my solution, do it.
I don't know. Yeah, so, I mean, that's a long way around the answer to that question, I suppose.
We don't know.
But, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that we as a nation should be concerned about and should invest more time in understanding, not just throw money at the problem, but also really, truly trying to, as community people, right, not shunning people who may have some sort of condition. I think that's really been a thing. If you think about history, I don't know how much you know about the history of sort of mental health in this country, but the idea about locking people away in asylums, and doing torturous things to them, or shock therapy or hydrotherapy where they immerse people in ice, and I mean, just things like that. Let's see what happens to them, almost like they were guinea pigs, and you're not helping anyone. So more research-based therapies and promoting the idea that it's not problematic for someone to seek that kind of help. You shouldn't feel.
That's the thing, is feeling isolated or you don't belong anywhere,
Yeah.
and then you don't
Well,
want to be shunned.
I'm just talking about like being embarrassed to admit that you have that kind of condition. That I need help. We should encourage people to seek help when they need it. All right, so we have some brilliant minds in here, and some of them are willing to share
Who's going
questions with
first?
us. Who It's a race. Who's first to the mic?
All right, I'm Aiden Frankie. Do you think that unconventional singers are capable of creating more expressive music?
What do you mean by unconventional?
Voices that are not traditionally appealing.
Okay.
Like non-operatic.
Yeah.
So you're not talking about the type of things they're writing, or it's just you're
quality
talking
of
physically,
voice.
just the sound.
Yes.
Tonality.
Just the tonality of the
Yeah.
voice. Of course. The Cranberries. That's just one. I mean, there are people with very, very unique voices that at some points in the music history they would be like, ugh, but then they have that. To kind of sound like her now is popular, but when she did it in the '90s, I don't know if I'm not going to sing the Cranberries for you, but she had a very unique voice, and then now a lot of people, new age people, are sounding like that.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you sort of a classic rock version of that same thing. One of my favorite bands, the Rolling Stones. Like Mick Jagger is not a great singer, but he's the best Mick Jagger style singer that there is. Does that make sense? And you know it when you hear it.
Dave Matthews is the same way.
Dave Matthews is very similar. Yeah. Bob Dylan would be a good example. Like I don't, but there's something deeper there, and I think that maybe the change in what people might expect to hear and then what they do hear from some of these singers actually creates more of an interest because it draws your attention to them because you're like, that's different. It's different.
But at the base level, there is something about music and the way music theory works and the reason chords and harmonies sound good to our ears as humans. You know what I mean? There's you can be completely unique and have a completely unique style, but at some base level, you have to be musical. Like you have to have something to it that's going with the music.
For me, though, I think that part of the appeal is that it doesn't sound like everybody else. Because then if everybody's like the same, and that's part of the problem I have. Really, the big problem I have with what's this thing where they make your voice and it's like auto-tune or whatever. One of the biggest things I have a problem with that is that it modulates everybody to almost sound the same, and it's so bland. And to me, art should be expressive and should be engaging. And if it just sounds like everything you've ever heard, then why am I listening to this?
And there's also such like contemporary singers are the poppy singers. They do a lot of tricks to make. They do a lot of guttural. Like they do a lot of that before they say something. No, I'm serious. They do like.
No, I know. It's very breathy.
Whatever like if they do a poppy guttural, like they'll do tricks to make it sound more current. But if you listen to a classically trained opera singer,
do it again.
No. Like Britney Spears. That's kind of where pop really took off. Where she's like, whatever she's saying, I don't even know. I can't even think of a song. But she really. It was more. She did these tricks, right? And a lot of people do these tricks to make it sound current. That's. But
who's the worst singer that you can think of that is actually popular though, or has? Well,
somebody like Toby Keith, like a country guy that. It's all about me. It's all about It's all about what? I hate that song, and I'm not a fan of his. But because
he knows it by heart.
I know. Well, it played it for a while. But, there's a lot of people can do that country thing. And not much range.
Right, yeah, right.
There's nothing, no big runs, But at the same time, there is something to having a good, pure country voice that attract, so.
Say your name.
Ian Hollis. Sorry. Hello.
Oh, he leaned in like I told him to. That's good. All right, go.
Okay. Yeah, my question is, what's your opinion on the entire situation with South Africa, especially concerning the white farmers and eminent domain with the government subsidization of the land?
All right, let's talk about this because we have to go all the way back to apartheid, back before '94.
Well, first of all, why is this an issue all of a sudden? Political?
I think some news outlets have picked up on it and have made it.
Some news outlets.
Some, not when
something broke in the news and it seemed pretty bad, and then all of a sudden we're talking about South Africa. I don't know if anybody noticed that.
Well, but there's a lot of
look over there.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about this particular story, and some of you may not know what's going on. In South Africa, there used to be this horrific segregationist system called apartheid. And the word is literally a Dutch word which means separate society. You are apart from one another. That's what it means. Complete separation, and none of this separate but equal stuff either. It was just you're separate, and that's just the way it is. All right, so with that being said, in 1994, apartheid is officially ending because you have the election of Nelson Mandela, the guy who was the president before that, a guy named W.E.B. de Klerk, who they both together won a Nobel Peace Prize for helping to end the apartheid system. After that, the idea was going to be that there would be openness not only in the election process, but all openness in society, and people could move about, and you could have freedom of opportunities and all of those things. This many years later, with a white minority that still exists in the country, and let's say there's probably less, I'd have to look at the actual statistic, but I'm going to say somewhere between 5 and 8% of the overall population is sort of European-based white. 2018, they still own like 96% of the land. So what has been reported, which is also sort of a mistake, is that, and this is sort of come and gone, there have been flare-ups like this before, that, the government of South Africa is going to start snatching land away from people who have traditionally owned it, white farmers and whatever, who still own bulks of land, and they're going to start giving it out to other people. And if that doesn't work, then they'll violently do that. And so there's been all these rumors, and there's been open violence, and people have been killed. The current situation, to answer Ian's question, is that they're not taking anybody's land who owns it. They're actually reclaiming unused land in cities, abandoned buildings, abandoned areas, and so it's not quite what it seems. They're trying, but the idea that they're forcing people who own land to they're like robbing them to give to the others. That's actually not what's happening, and so there is a lot of misunderstanding there, which is fueled by. I don't like to say fake news, but there are people who are extremely biased in the reporting, who are trying to push that forward. And like Fox News, the actual journalists do a really good job.
Yeah, there's a few that
fair
are really
and balanced thing that they promote actually is true with their journalists.
With about 3 of them.
But the majority of the time that you flip on there, like, it's not that. It's these guys who are more entertainment based. And we mentioned this a while ago too. Like, even Sean Hannity admits, I'm not a journalist. I'm an entertainer, and I'm going to say things that are inflammatory because that's how I get attention and that's how I get sponsors. So it's just something for you to take into consideration. Just because you're on a quote unquote news channel doesn't make you a guy who's giving the news, or girl, in this case may be. So
Ainsley Rottinghouse.
Hello.
And my question is, what are your thoughts on John McCain?
He's dead.
Well, a lot of people are saying, what's the big deal? And I mean, look, this guy lived a full life, right? And there's a few things that make his life different from another senator that dies that we never even talk about or even know what happens. Number one, he served all the way till his death, basically. So it's not like he disappeared for a year before he died. So he was in the spotlight. Number two, he came out pretty publicly against our president as a Republican, which was rare. And they had a contentious relationship, starting with when Trump didn't call him a military hero.
So there's already a lot of attention paid to this guy, right?
And then you take that, going from literally a POW. His father also, obviously, was a famous military leader. So the 5 years in a prison camp, getting shot down, and then going right into politics and being a senator, being in the public eye all these years. Plus, apparently, good character, bad temper, ran for president twice. So you take all that together, he is distinctive. I mean, he definitely is on another level than even some presidents. You know, he had that contentious relationship with the president, and, well, it's really the president's, politically speaking, it was stupid for the president to say he wasn't a hero. And then, our president is sometimes like a big kid, right? Like, nope, I'm not, nope, raise that flag back up. Nope, we're not going to honor him that much. Protocol would, it was just a sad kind of thing to watch, because you would hope that the president would be a bigger man, to be a little bit kind of rise above some of the past squabbles they had.
I'm pushed by the other side. Why do people, this is the other thing I don't get about that. Why do people hate, and maybe some of you guys know this, why do people hate Nancy Pelosi? Like, what is this vehement hatred of her about? I don't know. Somebody can enlighten me on that.
Yeah. Well, she was speaker, of course.
I know it's a thing, but I don't know why. Did she do something? Did she like run over somebody's kid? Like, what happened?
Well, yeah.
I'm curious. I seriously do not know.
My name is Matt Mangan.
Okay.
I think Nancy Pelosi has had a history of twisting a lot of things that people have said, specifically like right-wing, like right-leaning people.
Can you give me an example? Because I don't know.
So I know Trump talks about.
So it's the rhetoric more than the action that people are bothered by?
I think she feels like she has to target a lot of people because nobody else will.
Okay.
And she's kind of like the leader of this new movement of outspoken. What's up?
You said a lot. she targets a lot of people. Like what?
I mean, I feel like she targets right-wing conservatives for almost anything they say, and will take it out of context. And I know like Trump has had a history of, he has a big mouth, but like at the heart of it, like at the heart of most of the things he says, it's not necessarily, adamantly attacking the left side, but she takes it that way.
I was curious.
Frankly, I just think she's annoying. Like,
Hillary Clinton had the same issue. It went from here's
person.
the Secretary of State to now she is the devil. Like it flipped, and I get it. She was running for president, but I mean, I had friends. One of the guitar players I worked with, he said, "I hate her. I hate her." I was like, "Why?" I just do. I just can't stand. And I was like, he doesn't know one reason why. He said Benghazi, because I guess she went in there with a machine gun and started. Look, I get it. I understand that she might have been partially responsible for that madness. But man, she went from Secretary of State to just. So I think it's that same kind of thing. But what?
Yeah.
My name's Jameen. What profession would you like to attempt other than your own?
Music. Which I guess technically I get paid to play, but it's not what does it take to be a professional musician? The definition would be someone pays you to play music. So in that case,
does it have to be your solo occupation or the prime occupation for you to be a professional? I don't know.
Because a lot of people do what I do and just play on the weekends. And so, but if I could just sell it all to go do something else besides teach history, which I love teaching history, as you know, I keep saying that. But it'd be music. I mean, playing drums. Something,
I think
guitar.
I'd like to be. You ever seen those guys jump out of planes with those squirrel suits and they can just fly? I want to do that professionally. I think that'd be fun.
Did you see that dude in one that hit the bridge?
No.
Yeah, well.
Why would you? He jumped off the bridge and hit the same bridge?
No, he jumped off something else and he was going and he just wind picked up. He went the wrong way and went head first into a bridge.
Yeah.
And he was dead instantly. We're not designed to jump out of things like that or really anything like that.
Have you ever been skydiving?
No, I'd do it though. I'm not afraid of heights or anything.
The thought of it appeals to me, but then if you're standing, I've heard a lot of people say that they'll freeze in the doorway. I can do it, and you got that whole adrenaline thing going on. Maybe you got a little testosterone because you got some buddies with you or whatever, and then you get in the doorway and you're like, holy, and you can't actually do. I don't know. I mean, it seems like it would be fun, but
but the first one you got
at that door. I don't know, man.
You got a tandem jump, so there's that dude that's attached to
you got to have. Yeah,
you just feel like a child.
You can't just go by yourself yet. All right, hello.
Hello.
State your name. Yeah, there you go.
Samuel Novarola. Do you guys agree with scientists bringing past extinct species back to life?
Okay, so this goes back to the woolly mammoth thing that they're thinking might actually help our environment.
I have two thoughts on this because number one, I'd like to see some of these animals. I think it'd be interesting to see extinct animals.
I think if
especially the massive ones. But
if it has a species that's already exists. I mean, I'm more like the woolly mammoth is basically an elephant. I'm not into like bringing back a T-Rex or a raptor. We see how that goes down. A saber-toothed tiger. We don't need one of those. We have tigers though, so they probably wouldn't be too bad.
I read that there's an extinct species of giant sloth that were apparently as big as rhinos or something. They're huge. I mean, that might be because I think I could probably get away from one. If he was after me. Yeah, I agree with you. The T-Rex thing, maybe not, but
maybe the woolly mammoth, if it does actually help the climate, and they put 1,000 or so, probably 20,000 of them up there crushing ice or whatever they're saying. I forgot. I listened to actually a biologist talk about that actually could help, but I don't know. It would be cool, but I've seen Jurassic Park. I know how that movie ends.
What about human cloning? Do you think that's a good idea?
No, we got too many people already. We need a plague, people. We need to clone people. We got enough. I don't know.
Nobody. You wouldn't clone anybody.
No.
Okay.
I'd clone me and then make them teach so I can just stay at home.
What I would think, what I would do if I could clone myself, I would just use that guy for parts. Like when some of mine were, I just get that from that guy.
Well, that will be a thing. That's already going to be a thing for sure.
I need a kidney. Come here. Clone. Come on. Yeah.
Someone is making their way to the stage. We don't do dead air, so I'll just keep talking randomly until they get up here and go.
Natalie Jennings, what historical figure has made the biggest impact on the world?
On the world.
Well, I have a book that's called The 100 Most Influential People. And if you have me in class, you probably already know the answer to this. And this is controversial because Jesus is number 3 and Mohammed is ranked number 1. So Mohammed, and I mean, it shouldn't be controversial because we're just talking about the human, how much impact while they were here. And then, of course, what they did, how big of an impact it had historically. And it's because he wrote the sacred text for Islam, where Jesus really didn't write anything that we know of. He also conquered thousands of people before his death, where Jesus only had like 12 followers. So what the guy did was he split credit between Jesus and St. Paul for Christianity, where Muhammad gets nearly all the credit.
Do you guys, can you think of anybody that you know right now that like your kids might actually listen to and appreciate? Or do you think that everything is so disposable now that it just...
Is it always going to go back to the 70s and 80s?
Yeah, because right now there's a lot of people I know that your age that still like the music I talked about a while ago that from the 70s, like 60s, 70s, and 80s. So, who do you have? Huh? Cardi B will still be around.
In 5 years, you think she'll still be?
No. Well, she may be popular.
Maybe.
I agree that she's popular right now, but I'm talking about your kids coming along. Like, let's say 16 to 20 years from now, that your kids will be listening to that. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to predict some of these things. And not a one-time only because something goes crazy, right?
So when I look at it in that context, they probably didn't overreact because and I've talked to the administrators about this. I've talked to parents and everybody. Like, nobody wants it to go back to that. Well, we'd like it to be a crosstown rivalry where you can get in each other's face a little bit, but still, it's still got some respectability to it, right? The whole idea ultimately is that we're going to play this game. It's not about we don't actually hate you, but we're going to sort of rile ourselves up just for this moment. But when it crosses that line, and like I said, because it had crossed the line before, everybody is all the people that are in control aspects of this, the administration, the coaches, any little thing that looks like it could be going down that path is going to get stomped out immediately because they just will not let that happen. I promise you, there'll be a lot of administrators who will sleep a lot better tomorrow night than they will tonight.
And by the way,
all right. So
say your name.
Oh, Carson Phillips.
There you go.
And so earlier today in English, there's a big controversy about if there is a wage gap in America between men and women whenever they're in equal spaces. I was wanting to get your opinion.
Okay, as quick as I can. Generally speaking, there's not a wage gap between men and women doing the same job at the same company. That would basically be illegal. You just can't, because that would be sexual discrimination. That'd be an obvious one, right? There is a wage gap if you take all women and all men and all occupations. There could even be a wage gap per occupation. So we take all women doctors, we take all men doctors and figure out, but there's reasons for this. Now, if you're going to do generalities, that means you take all women and all men and figure it all up. And it is true that if you do that, women might make 70 cents to a man's dollar. But there's a lot of reasons for this. Such as, here's one. Job choice. Women generally, this is all generalizations, women generally choose jobs that make less money. They would rather be, they're into more people care and health care and nursing and teaching, and where men seem to be, generally speaking, more ambitious naturally. Now, that, once again, I'm speaking in very vague generalities, right? I don't mean there's not ambitious women, right? So just please understand, I'm going across the board. Men seem to be more cutthroat and competitive by nature, period. Once again, there's levels to everything, so don't get me in trouble. Everybody's different. And generally speaking, I'm going to say, have I said generally speaking enough?
I think you've made that point.
So women tend to choose jobs that are different than the jobs that men tend to choose. Also, women tend to they're the only one of the two that generally has children and stay at home with the kids. So they generally work less hours. So if you're just figuring up how much people make, period, and that's all you're figuring in and not hours and stuff, there's another reason that women tend to make less. And I could go on. I mean, there's about 25, I think, factors as to why there actually is a wage gap. There is sexual discrimination. That's another reason. But that's one of 25 things. So if somebody says there's a wage gap between men and women and we have to end it, okay, well, then you're going to have to figure out how to make women choose jobs they might not want, not let them have kids while they're working, and a 20 other things.
I mean,
So it is true there is a pay gap.
Yeah.
But the reason for it is way more complex than most people will just. It's not just sexual discrimination and that's it.
Although that is a thing.
Although that is a thing.
So let's go. Say your name.
Jordan Lyle.
Yep.
Has communism ever worked for anybody?
Simply no.
It did pretty well for Stalin.
For individual person. He did say anybody.
That's right.
So if that one guy, second guy, Kim Jong-un, really, really good at communism. It really worked well for that guy. But as far as the people in those countries, we're going to get into this. I mean, it's a long time before we actually study this in class. But
we're going to get into it too. So
yeah, the idea that it's the way it typically runs. Let me back up. Communism as a political theory is interesting because it tries to elevate people who weren't able to elevate themselves before. But in practice, it's much more complex than that, and it won't work because ultimately it undermines competition to a certain extent. And if you're facing a capitalist system that is competing with you in your communist system, you're going to fall behind. And that's exactly what we've seen happen in every case. Then you add on the fact that to force everybody to do these things, you have to become a totalitarian government, and that is never a positive thing. To force people, if you don't agree exactly with what we say or exactly what we do, then we're going to hurt you. That's how they maintain control over those systems as they're trying to transition. So if they were actually do it the way it was supposed to be done and you're helping people, like that would be different. But it's never been sort of performed in the way that it was meant to be, and so that's why they've all failed.
Could you tell us more about the lost colony?
Name.
My name's Chase.
Say it into the mic.
All right, my name's Chase.
There you go.
And my question is, could you tell us more about the lost colony of Roanoke?
I don't know that much about it. I'm not an expert. 1585, the very first English colony?
Yeah, it was the first true attempt at a colony. And
it's an island right off the coast of North Carolina.
This guy's name, White, was he the commander?
Sir Walter Raleigh.
It wasn't Raleigh. Mm-hmm. I thought the dude White was with them. Because he had the...
Oh, well, there might be somebody else, but Sir Walter Raleigh's ship.
Okay.
He left the one, 100 people or a little over.
Did he stay?
Nope.
Okay, so he just dropped him off.
But he stayed for a few months, and then he said he would return, got caught up in the wars. 3 years later, they're all gone.
Yeah. Think about for you guys that don't know, Roanoke was this giant mystery about what happened to these colonists. They came and they landed and they looked like they were being successful. They built themselves a community there. They're eking out an existence here. And then there's constant warfare at that time between England and France. And so the people who had gone back to Europe for provisions to help these people kind of get through were stuck for a long time because there were blockades and things like that, and they just couldn't get back. By the time they got back, everybody in the colony was gone, and there's a couple hundred people, right? Am I right?
Yeah,
about
initially
that?
100, but they were building. They probably would have had more people by then.
So what happened to these people? Some people theorize that maybe there was some sort of sickness and they all fled the island. Maybe they were attacked. I've even seen people, because there's always that guy who it was aliens. There's always that thing. They're on Alpha Centauri now. They sucked away into the. But here's some people had theorized that maybe they tried to they got desperate and they tried to build their own boat and they tried to sail back, and then maybe they got caught in a storm and it sank, or what's plausible, I think, more than anything else, is that they ran slow on supplies and they went to the mainland to try to find something else, and they either got incorporated into Native American groups and just sort of blended in with them, or they got into some sort of warfare with them, or they all starved to death.
They just probably weren't prepared. But there was a clue. It said Croatoan.
Yeah, nobody left they didn't leave a note, hey, we're going here, we'll be back. The weird with the thing with the Croatoan written on the board, that is a weird sign. No sign of struggle, no burial sites. It's like they just all disappeared one day. That's the mystery part, So I don't know. Maybe we'll find evidence someday, but
they're still there digging around trying to figure out what happened to these people.
What was your...
Hi, I'm Isabella Calhoun, and we touched on this last year, I know, but you only got our opinions. So I was wondering if y'all think Edward Snowden was right to expose the government, and...
I did ask y'all that question, yeah.
And also, if you didn't, do you think we had the right to know? And then also on that note, do you think that you as history teachers would ever get, from the things you look up, talked to by the government based on like looking at maybe something a student asked?
Let me address the second thing you said first. If there's not an FBI file on me, I will be super surprised because I'm always looking up some horrible event.
I know, and I'm on the same list he's on.
You know, it's like my Google search looks like terrorism, terrorists, ISIS, Al Qaeda.
What's good about Hitler?
Genocide. You know, that's the things I'm looking up because I have to be able to explain things to you. You know, who are these people? What are they about? I don't know.
What was the first one? What was the first?
Yes. Edward Snowden. Should he have, the whistleblower?
As a normal average citizen, I want whistleblowers, right? But I don't want them at the possible collapse of our nation. Also, the people that want them are never in power, and then when they get in power, they don't want them. So whoever's in power doesn't want whistleblowers, and whoever isn't does. I mean, there's probably levels to all of this. You know, we do have to have some national secrets. We do have to have classified information. There has to be some stuff. But I think, when things cross the line to that degree, then
his story is, for you guys that don't know, Edward Snowden's story, he worked for the NSA, and he realized that the government was actually doing illegal activities. They were monitoring when they shouldn't. They were keeping data longer than they weren't supposed to, and then they were also pressuring companies to give them information that they weren't legally allowed to have. So he basically he published all of these things, so to speak, to call the government out for the things they were doing wrong. I applaud the fact that he was willing to put his life on the line to call out the government for doing illegal things. However, the way he went about that, which caused us to lose some credibility globally, and potentially gave away things that could have been harmful to U.S. service members, to our government's processes and things like that, and our international relations. I really don't like that aspect of it. So, but if he could have found a different way, I think maybe to handle that situation, then it would be different. But on one hand, he should have been able and we do have whistleblower laws that protect people that do that kind of thing. But how he went about it made him a criminal.
Michael Morgan, how do you feel about Trump being accused of hacking the election along with Russia?
I'd like to see some evidence. I mean, people keep pointing fingers, right? If it's a thing, I think that the investigation that's going on with Mueller, I think that there's going to come a point in time where that investigation is going to end. It's not going to drag on forever. Some people want it to end quickly because they're tired of waiting, but true investigative work takes as much time as it needs to take, honestly. And so we'll eventually find out what they have discovered, and then that'll come out in court, and then that'll have to be proven one way or the other. If it's true that there's been this massive security breach,
right? I mean,
basically, would it be
criminal?
If you think that if anybody in here thinks that Russia has our best interests at heart, you are sadly mistaken. The Cold War never really truly ended. It sort of just went on pause for a little while, almost like it went into like this little. It chilled out for a while, but it's back. It's definitely a problem. They would love to have our resources. This is something we've been talking about a little bit. If you're not able to take care of yourself, other people come take your stuff, right? This is one of those stories. So if it's true that our president worked with a foreign agent like this country, like Russia, even if it was rich dudes who had an association with that government and they purposely wanted this guy to be president, if that is absolutely true, then that is criminal. It is treasonous, and we'll have to deal with that accordingly. All right. Say your name.
Georgia Gooch.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Georgia.
Hi.
Okay. Do you believe the moon landing happened?
Yes.
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 Next.
Well, I mean, we have telescopes powerful enough to see the landing sites. You can see the tracks. You can see the lunar modules up there. There's really no debate about that.
No.
I think the Earth is flat.
In general, people who are conspiracy theorists can't handle how complex the world actually is, so they need some kind of simpler explanation for themselves. So they dream up this massive human network that's everybody's fooling everybody because that's simpler for them to believe than we actually did something as magnificent as going to the moon.
Yeah, and we had to have, like 50,000 people involved in that? So they're just going, all right, nobody tell anybody. Okay. It's like a Razorback game. No, everybody stay silent. Don't no leaks.
Imagine this. If it was truly a conspiracy, there would be literally thousands of people who would have to keep that secret. No. I know. I wasn't insinuating that you did believe that, but yeah, for the people who are hardcore, like they don't consider this fact, like, and this many decades later, right? The moon landing happened the year I was born. I'm almost 50. A half a century worth of keeping all of those people quiet. Nobody leaked any information. It's all right. So I mean, there would be someone who has credibility within the side of the system would go, look, it really wasn't this. Somebody would have come forward. But so all these people that do come forward are not really associated with the thing. It's, you know.
We also had a huge technology boost after the Apollo space program. I mean, there was a lot of technology that came out of that. So it wasn't like we just didn't show anything for it.
If it hadn't happened, it would have been proven by now, is what I'm saying.
Just like you should.
Here's a tangential thing. I found this out not too long ago, and it really kind of stunned me, but it was so simple I didn't even think about it. That you talk about us being able to see the things on the, you know, the American flag that we have we're so proud to show those pictures of the astronauts saluting the flag and whatnot. It's been up there so long that the flag has actually been bleached white. Like you can't see. Yeah, it's kind of sad, but yeah.
I'm Ryan Sarden, and I was wondering whether you believed Kurt Cobain's death was a suicide or if it was a murder. That's a popular conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Good
Okay.
grief,
Yeah,
class.
okay.
Let it go, everyone. It's fine.
Well, I mean, Kurt Cobain wasn't short, but I don't know if his arms were long enough.
You can always use your toes with a shotgun.
Right,
I
like
suppose.
yeah. And there are people that have done that. Like, could you actually?
I think that Courtney Love killed him. Me too. Yeah. No, I mean I don't know. It's probably. I don't know. What are the other theories? I mean, or guesses about that? That she hired somebody. Yeah. She is crazy. I mean, I guess it could be a thing.
Right, because I mean, you've developed tolerances to stuff like that, and because the average human being couldn't handle that much heroin.
And for a male, this is a little gruesome, and I apologize for that. But statistically, males are much more likely to end their lives violently. You know, so that kind of fits into the standard as well. So I don't know. Surely he wasn't thinking clearly, and especially with that much, you know, foreign substances in his body. But to think that he couldn't have done it because he had been, you know, on this trip, I don't know. Man.
A lot of people theorize that the last part of his suicide note is forged by Courtney Love. She was found with like scraps of paper that had her trying to emulate his handwriting on it. But the first part of it could be interpreted as him leaving Nirvana or leaving the music industry altogether. And if he left, then his music wouldn't be making as much money, and that's a possible motive for it. So that's popular theory.
Well, you know, I mean, it kind of goes back to anything's possible, I guess, but what's the probability of that being true? I tend to look at that, you know. It's more probable that given his history and given his substance abuse and given his depression levels and past attempts, that it probably was him, you know, so.
Plus, it seems like Courtney Love would have a tough time making a clean murder happen in forensics DNA. They wouldn't pick up on it.
She doesn't seem like a criminal mastermind
But,
to me,
you know,
yeah.
if she hired a hitman to do it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
So who is your either favorite or who you felt was the best ever historical leader?
Okay, that's leader.
Wow.
Leader.
Oh, as far as conquering, Alexander the Great's tough to beat. I mean,
I don't know. You can make a pretty good argument for Genghis there. Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan, yeah.
We could go with military conquests, getting that many people to follow you into some sort of, you know, battle scene, or it could be leadership from a standpoint of true motivation. Like we could talk about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You know that you motivate people in a different way. It's still about motivation, regardless of how you do it. But so it depends on how we want to focus that attention. Is it military? Is it political? Is it social? Is it civil? What
George Washington, man.
Washington is hard to beat.
He's hard. If you're just talking about a pure leader that keeps everybody together, and without him, I don't know that we even declare independence, or if we win.
I don't know that we
survive
the first years.
Even if we survive the first years, if we even win it. So.
The only other person I can think of that's sort of on the same lines, although I don't think he has the same sort of moral characteristic, would be Napoleon Bonaparte in European history. That guy had a tremendous impact on the way that the modern world looks. I mean, the decisions he made, that you talk about one guy who changed global history, that dude did.
You know, so
I think,
but at the same time,
Napoleon-
I don't think that he had the same sort of. I don't think that he was as strong as his character goes as say a Washington.
We're actually going to compare those two figures because they live basically around the same time, and they're both great leaders. And I do think Napoleon's more influential overall.
Something that I want to add to the conversation, I couldn't argue with either one of those choices, would be we've learned a lot of negative things about both of those individuals, especially Washington in recent times when when we've allowed ourselves as a society to level criticism against this guy that we've made a god in a lot of ways in our history. And we're seeing this kind of thing more and more and more. There are these people that we've admired forever, and now suddenly people are questioning whether or not we should admire them because some awful thing that they did has come to light. And this is kind of another pivotal moment in our society and what answer we come to this. Because do you throw away everything that's good that somebody ever did in their entire life because they did some bad things too? Because doesn't that describe us all,
We've
right?
talked about this quite a bit, right? we started with Columbus. That was our example of this. But I even had a Google group question. Is it fair to judge past by present standards? And Henry Ford, and you can go down the Walt Disney. We can talk about some people that you wouldn't call them good people, right? So separating achievement from, character or personal stuff.
With Washington, I think context matters, though, because by the modern standards that we have, it would be reprehensible for some of the things that they were involved in. We talk about, ownership of humans and trafficking.
Absolutely.
And things like that, and the way that sometimes they made their money. So to take them out of their individual context, I don't know is necessarily fair to them, and I don't know that it detracts from it. If they were here now and saying, "Oh, we believe that this should have been the way," that would be different, I think.
So.
I mean, we are a product. This is what cultural appropriation is so nutty. We've been culturally appropriating since there's been cultures. And this is a new crazy thing that came out, 2 years ago? Because
we had this conversation in my AP World class the other day. If you have heard people say,
we haven't ever talked about this. I don't
think.
No,
we haven't.
But
if you heard somebody say recently, well, so and so can't wear this because you're a culturally appropriation, which means you're stealing from their culture, basically. Please understand that there is not a singular pure culture on this planet. Not one. Everybody learns from everybody else. You don't control your own cultural aspects. Even if you lived in absolute isolation, the moment you met somebody else across your little community that was doing something a little different, you've just appropriated that because you're using it for yourself. Maybe you appreciated that and you did it. Let's say you meet somebody who's a distant person and they've never seen you before. You see something in their culture that they like, they see something in your culture like, all of a sudden you didn't have to give that to them. They saw it. You've lost it. You don't actually own culture. It's not a thing. We all build from everything we've seen and everything we've experienced. We are a human culture, and it is messy and it is beautiful at the same time. You don't get to keep stuff just because you want to.
All right, guys, y'all be safe. Have a great weekend. And that is the podcast.